3 healthy foods that could be wreaking havoc on your body.
I probably have kale maybe 4 or 5 times a week. Do I put myself at risk then?
All new on The Doctors.
Doctor, give me the news.
Do you have a medical question you want the answer to ASAP? Well, some people ask their friends on Facebook. Well, you can actually ask us anytime, like this one from Sarah in North Carolina who writes, I was just diagnosed with mild hypothyroidism. I've heard there are certain foods that I should stay away from, and I read an article that kale may be harmful. Is that true? Well, believe it or not, this basket of amazing produce contains some foods that may, in excess, be harmful to those who have thyroid conditions. And joining us now to talk about this is endocrinologist Dr. Joseph Pinzone. And this is fascinating, but we know in medicine, anytime you do or take or eat too much of anything may not always be that great. So tell us about how these foods might affect your thyroid.
Absolutely. Well, you're exactly right, and it's really important for people to understand that the foods that are in that basket are indeed healthy foods. We're talking about patients who have thyroid disease. 40 million Americans have it. 10 million have mild thyroid disease, and those are the patients that really should worry about it. So kale, for example, a superfood, rightly so, great food, rightly so, has packed with nutrients, proteins, but it also has chemicals that cause the thyroid to enlarge. So again, if you're right on that borderline, it's important as an educational component to think about kale and what it might do if you overdo it.
So don't give up kale, but just don't eat it every single meal?
Exactly.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. So for a person who has no thyroid issues, kale is their go-to vegetable. You know, because I probably have kale maybe 4 or 5 times a week. Do I put myself at risk then with kale?
That's an excellent question, and the answer is we don't know because you know there's no good studies. It's not like they're medications. What we do know is that in Africa, for example, in the Sudan, where millet seeds comprise 75% of the diet, along with iodine deficiency, there's a disproportionate amount of goiter. So you can overdo it even in the normal state, very unlikely.
So that's why when people say, oh, should I do kale or spinach? I say do them both. Mix them up.
Mix them up. That's the message.
All right, so let's move on. What do we have over here? Some soybeans? What's going on with those?
We do. So with soybeans, again, great food, packed with protein, but it has a chemical in it that inhibits thyroid peroxidase, an enzyme that is important for production of thyroid hormone.
So then, too, are you suggesting as primary care providers that when we diagnose someone with a thyroid issue that we start asking about their diet? Are you eating high quantities of this because potentially it could throw off the thyroid?
I am suggesting that, and I wouldn't propose that people would completely cut out any of these foods. I would limit them to maybe once a week if they really, really like them. If they didn't like them, they can then avoid them.
Well, luckily this last one that may cause a problem for some people is not one of my favorites.
Which one? Don't insult the cauliflower.
I'm not. It's a great food, another great quote-unquote superfood, but I'm just not in love with the taste of cauliflower.
It makes a good mashed potato-like substance, too.
No, you have to try it with some red pepper flakes and olive oil, but I mean, we talk about food as medicine all the time here, and this is, I think this is pretty interesting information.
So how does cauliflower affect the thyroid?
Sure. Well, food science in the last 10 years has really skyrocketed, and in the case of cauliflower, thiocyanates, a particular chemical that it contains, again, along with all the good chemicals, can suppress the body's ability to incorporate iodine, another component of thyroid hormone, into the thyroid gland.
Wow.
You know how we always talk about let food be your medicine?
Yes.
When we say food, we mean food in plural.
Right.
Rainbow of foods are what really create the wonderful synergistic, we call it a symphony. So really isn't the takeaway here that you should never just focus on one food group and eat too much of that, because whether it's thyroid issues or potentially other problems, because we didn't even get into how too much soy can affect estrogen and things of that nature. So too much of anything can be bad for us. Is that what we're taking away from this?
That really is, and that balance is the key. So in terms of a proper plate, you should have about half that plate be very colorful vegetables, a quarter of it be grains and other plant materials, and about a quarter of it be a good solid source of protein, fish, lean meats.
And of course, it should be noted that if you're concerned that you have thyroid problems, not only can you get a quick exam, but there are biomarkers that can tell you whether or not you're hyper or hypothyroid. That's a pretty easy test for your primary care doctor to perform. Dr. Pinzone, thank you so much for sharing these fascinating factoids with us. We'll be right back.